being able to listen to your body and really tune in and really differentiate the difference between discomfort and pain. Discomfort is something we can sit with and we can move through. And I think there's very much still this mentality of no pain, no gain. We joke and we talk about suffering and how much we enjoy it, but really what we're talking about is discomfort. When we have words like sharp or shooting or grabbing, those are sensations that tell us like, hey man, you need to pay attention to this because this isn't going to just go away.
That's Rachel Lee Boim. Rachel is a record-holding endurance athlete and doctor of physical therapy who has set multiple fastest known times, or FKTs, on iconic routes like the Kilimanjaro Summit Circuit, Aconcagua, and the trail from Namche Bazaar to Everest Base Camp. Rachel began her mountaineering journey at age 33. Since then, her on-the-go lifestyle has led her across 6 continents to compete in ultramarathons and high-altitude ascents. I'm Angie, and this is See Her Outside, brought to you by the Cairn Project and the Summit Scholarship Foundation. We share stories of women, girls, and gender-diverse adventurers to promote belonging and visibility in nature. We hope that this story inspires you to advocate for a more inclusive outdoors. Rachel's a volunteer trailblazer at the Cairn Project, and she's an incredible example of how women can blend their passions with philanthropy. Our Get Out, Give Back motto echoes exactly how Rachel spends her time. She supports organizations like the Alliance for Gender Equity and Outdoor Adventure and the Pink Fund by turning her personal adventures into grassroots fundraisers. Plus, she's weaving in her professional expertise to all this. In fact, you are invited to join us on July 31st for a free virtual Trail Talk with Rachel, all about injury prevention in outdoor adventure. Bring your questions about pain, strength training, that nagging thing that you feel in your knee, whatever. But you gotta RSVP in advance, so go to the link in the show notes or cairnproject.org/trail-talks to get on the list. Obviously, there are a million reasons to fangirl over Rachel, but what I love to talk about most with our trailblazers are the sticky topics, the vulnerable stories that are a little hard to share publicly, but that make us who we are. The tough parts of our past are often the reasons why we spend time outdoors and we want other women to spend time outdoors. For Rachel, her journey to becoming a record-setting outdoors woman mirrored her shifting relationship with her own body. In her 20s, Rachel felt a growing draw to the outdoors. I asked how the wild pulled her in.
I was actually in treatment for disordered eating, and I've been an athlete of sorts my whole life, whether it was soccer or crew or weightlifting, just there's always been some component of athletics that's been an important part of my life since I was a teenager. In my 20s, I was really struggling with depression. And for me, the way that manifests itself a lot of the times is through body dysmorphia, and kind of how I am perceiving my situation comes out in how I perceive my body, if that makes sense. And it's especially if there's a lot of things that I feel like I don't have control over. My body is something that I do have control over. So that can come out in all sorts of weird sideways. And I was at this place where they essentially partner younger women who are struggling with disordered eating with women who have graduated from the program and worked it and have continued to be successful. So it's kind of like you have this person who knows what it's like to go through what you're going through, even if it's not the exact same experience, to just have somebody who speaks that common language and who can understand where you're coming from. I was partnered with this wonderful woman who was based in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I went out and ended up visiting her when I graduated from the inpatient part of the program. And we went on like all of the hikes. And one of the things that I really took away from my time with her was the choice to fuel my body for the purpose of being able to do the things that I wanted to do. Learning to reorganize my relationship with food to be around food being something that empowers me to do the things that I want to do and to give me the energy to do those things was really important and really special. And she really helped to facilitate that for me. And in turn, I have also been working with that program to be able to help other women move forward.
I'm really grateful for when people like you speak up around these topics, because it's all too common for women, and especially female athletes, to have weird, sticky relationships with food. And, you know, you and I probably know that that's because of the way that media tells us that, like, how women should be and how we should show up in the world. It's not something that we necessarily like expect to come to us. But if we take in enough outside media and talk to enough people, we're bound to run into some sort of disordered eating in the future. Your middle school and high school introductions to sport and moving your body, did you start noticing any warning signs, or were you kind of blindsided by body dysmorphia?
I think for me, at least, it's more of the way that I like process rather than having like an outside source saying that I need to look a certain way. And it was more about being able to control what was going on, like what was going into my body when I was feeling badly.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It totally does. Yeah. I struggled with some disordered eating patterns in college. And for me, it was different because I was noticing, you know, articles online talking about how to have the strongest body for your marathons or whatever. And those, for me, were what seeped into my brain. I don't think I had a lot of misinformation or like propaganda coming into me in younger ages. And for me, it was really college where it ramped up, which makes sense because it's also a time when you are trying to cope with anxiety and big life changes and all of that. So yeah, we all have different stories. And again, it's just so wild that so many of us end up dealing with something similar.
Well, absolutely. And I think that there's like a certain physique and a certain body that we expect to look a certain way when we're doing a sport. You know, it's like when you see an advertisement and it's always like a woman who's like very thin and has a six pack and she's wearing a sports bra and these cute little matching shorts and her hair looks perfect and she's not sweaty and she just PR'd on a marathon. And you're like, how do I look like that? Like, why is it that I'm training so hard, but I don't look like that person in that picture? You know, even though we can acknowledge that it's unrealistic and we know that it's like logically it's not real and that's not true, but to have continuous exposure to things like that, I think can definitely influence the way that you feel emotionally, even if your logical brain is saying something different.
Can you think of a time during that sort of recovery process and working with your mentor and viewing food as fuel? Can you think of a specific time where it sort of clicked for you and you realized, oh, wait, like fueling my body actually feels really good?
I think in the beginning, it was about renewing my love of snacks, and being excited about having these like special snacks that I would only have on the trail. For me, it's when I'm doing like long backpacking trips or something, it's the peanut butter pretzels. And those still, like, I only eat those when I'm on the trail. And it's just, so it made food feel special. So instead of it being, and you know, when you're doing an ultra and you're doing a big effort, eating definitely does become a chore. So trying to find something that makes it fun and makes it exciting, I think really helped me kind of turn a corner of like, oh, I have this special snack that I saved just for this day.
That's very relatable for me. When I was training for my 100-mile run last year, I noticed that after, 5-hour hot training runs or during races, I realized I have a love for Coca-Cola that I never knew about before. And honestly, if you gave me a can of Coke right now, I wouldn't like it. But if it's in the middle of a long run or right after a hot run, I'm like, this is the best drink ever. And in college, I would have shuddered to think of myself drinking Coca-Cola when really every food, every drink has its purpose, whether on an adventure in everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I be totally honest with you? When I was preparing this episode for editing, I thought about cutting out those parts that I just shared about my own experience. I thought it might be too personal or too distracting, too whatever. But then what Rachel shares next made me stop. She reminded me that our individual stories matter and they're a service to others.
I think it's really important to recognize that nobody has the same life experience, right? It's all unique to each of us, but we do have similar experiences. And I think sometimes when you're really in the thick of it and you're really feeling down and you're really feeling bad, regardless of whether it's you're dealing with addiction or you're dealing with abuse or you're dealing with eating disorders, recognizing that there are other people out there who have had an experience that's similar to you makes everything seem a little bit less scary. I'm just like getting emotional just thinking about it, like being able to have that connection to other people in the community just makes things feel a little bit more real and a little less isolating. So I think that it's incredibly important for people to get out and share their stories, whether it's on a platform like this or whether it's, mentoring somebody else who has been through something or reaching out and trying to find a mentor to help you. I think that that's just like an incredible service that we can provide to each other as humans so that people don't feel so scared.
Mic drop moment there. Which leads me to a quick plug for Field Notes. Field Notes are personal essays read by you for the See Her Outside podcast. We want to hear a nature-based story that shifted how you see the world or yourself. Got something in mind? Send an email to Angie@cairnproject.org so that we can hear your voice on this show. But back to Rachel for now. Like many of our stories, Rachel's is long and winding. She went through the healing process from body dysmorphia. She went to grad school, spending most of her days in a basement lab in Birmingham, Alabama. She became a doctor of physical therapy. And then, in the middle of life getting lifey, she started getting into big adventures.
I started traveling in 2019, just with friends going around before the world kind of shut down. I've always really enjoyed hiking. I've enjoyed hiking in beautiful places. In 2020, my sister was diagnosed with breast cancer. It was, fairly aggressive. She had to do a mastectomy. She had to do chemo. She had to do radiation. And that was a really scary time, in the midst of a pandemic. I also have my sister dealing with cancer, and she is just so badass. I feel like, I don't know, if I got cancer, I would just want to like crawl into my mom's bed and just like lay there until I was better. And my sister is like, I have cancer. This sucks. I'm going to like start doing HIIT workouts and like start raising money for a non-for-profit for women who like aren't as financially stable as I am, who are going through the same thing, right? Because that's just the kind of person that she is. And watching her go through that and just like seeing this strength that she had and then having her come out on the other side of it really inspired me. I knew that if Sarah could go through those things, with not just get through them, but move through them with power, that suddenly other things just didn't seem so scary anymore. So I took that as, well, what can I explore that scares me? And how can I like use that experience to become a better human? And not necessarily to the same level that she did, of course, but she really inspired me to do something that scared me. And, one of the things that I'd always wanted to do, but, I just never really was able to, was to get onto a bigger mountain. And I was like, all right, Sarah's good. She doesn't have cancer anymore. I'm going to go to France and I'm going to climb Mount Blanc with my friend and just like see what happens. And it was an amazing, beautiful, wonderful experience. I felt great the entire climb. And I had such a blast. And I just remember getting to the summit and looking out over the Alps. And it was like this beautiful sunny day. The timing was perfect. It was just myself, my friend, and our guide on top of the mountain. And I felt like this moment of pure joy and gratitude to be able to be in a space like that. And, I thought to myself, if I can continue to do things like this, everything else in my life is going to be fine, because this is what I'm passionate about. And this is the space that I want to exist in.
So after that, I met some people in Chamonix because I happened to be there during UTMB. And, at the time I didn't even know what UTMB was. I was just like, wow, there are a lot of runners here. I linked up with some people there and we started traveling together and just to all these different beautiful places. And it was kind of a challenge to myself of, okay, I know that I was able to do this hard thing and I did okay and I didn't die. What else can I do? And it was just about approaching mountaineering and running from a place of curiosity of not, I must do this thing, but what would it be like to do this? And I think I wrote to you a little bit about this, just thinking about, well, I know people normally climb Aconcagua segmentally. What would it be like to go from base camp to the summit in a single push? And, especially on a mountain like that where things are a little bit more controlled because there are so many people on the mountain, so it's safer to just, the worst thing that happens is I can't and I go back down. So I thought I would just try. And
that's a big pivot. You're like 0 to 60. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to be curious and I wanted to play. And I was given this opportunity to exist in a space that I love. And I wanted to try and see what happened.
Tell me what happened.
I succeeded. It turns out that I was so much stronger than I thought I was. I went from, in a very short time span, climbing my first mountain over 4,000 meters to setting a speed record on a 7,000 meter mountain. And I think a lot of that came from, one, having good support and having people who believed in me, and also just being curious and not letting it affect how I felt about myself or who I was as a person, whether or not I could do these things. The fact that I was able to just, I was so stoked to just be there that anything else was a bonus. And I think coming at it from that space just made everything so much more fun.
Is that the same mindset you have now when you chase new FKTs? Is, it's okay if I don't get it. I'm just happy to be here.
I am getting back to that. I think there was a little bit of time there where I sort of lost my way and I got caught up in, thinking about being sponsored. And, a lot of it was driven by, okay, here's this thing that I love and I'm good at it. How can I make this into my job? And that's where I made the mistake. Is it became a job and it stopped being fun. And it took me kind of taking a step back and taking some time off to realize, because something felt out of alignment. And, when you're in it and you're in the moment, it's hard to see the forest for the trees. So being able to take a step back and be like, why isn't this fun anymore? At what point did this stop being fun and start being work? And how do I go back to making it fun and not work?
What piece of it was the hard? Is it really just having expectations that you have to meet from other people? Or is it like a distraction? What is the worst part when you're dealing with those, sponsors or other pressures?
I think, having a sponsorship is a gift, right? Having a company say, hey, you're awesome. I believe in you and I want to help you go do rad things is great. And then it's the pressure coming from me internally of, okay, now there are these other people who believe in me and who are invested in me, and I want to perform at my best for them. So it stopped being about something that I was doing for myself and for joy, and it started being about something that I was doing for other people to try to please them.
How did you make the decision to pivot away from that and go back to that intrinsic motivation for adventure?
So it was actually pretty recently. I went to Costa Rica and I spent a few days with a shaman in the middle of the jungle, just myself and her, this wonderful plant medicine woman that I was able to connect with. And, no phone, no internet, no electricity. It was just us and the jungle. And I went in with the intention of knowing that I was out of alignment. And I really wanted to sit with that and figure out where that was coming from and how I could reorient my life to feel more in line with my values and who I am as a person.
So what's now? How are you approaching whatever upcoming adventures you have now? What's changed around your mindset?
I think a lot more gratitude of being able to have this work-life balance where I can travel all over the world and I can chase these FKTs and I can do these beautiful things in these beautiful places, and just recognizing what a gift that is has really helped me feel more balanced.
Can you speak to any women who are listening and they're like, I'm in my 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. It feels like I'm too late to really excel in a certain area. What would you say to them? Do you have any tips?
I think the biggest tip is that you don't know until you try. And I really believe that the only true failure in life is not trying. It doesn't matter if you've never run before and you want to go do a 5K, or you want to do your first ultra, or you want to climb your first big mountain. The only way that you fail in those pursuits is by sitting on the couch and talking about it and never actually getting out there and pursuing it.
Obviously, Rachel is getting out there, but it doesn't mean that every adventure goes to plan. In 2024, Rachel headed to Nepal for an adventure fundraiser for the Cairn Project and also supporting the Pink Fund, which is a nonprofit helping women with cancer cover non-medical expenses. Although she raised thousands of dollars for these causes, she's still processing her climb on Manaslu, which brought nuanced feelings for both her mind and her body.
So I'm not sure that I'm quite ready to talk about it. I think the main thing that I could say about Manaslu is that it's about the way that you approach a mountain. And I think I went into that experience because it was what I felt like I should be doing, and not because it was necessarily what I wanted to be doing or where I wanted to be. And that is a very spooky realization to have at 7,400 meters without oxygen.
Yeah.
Of like, what am I doing here? Like, this isn't where I want to be. This isn't what I want to be doing. This just, the timing wasn't right. And what is success and what is failure when it comes to climbing a mountain? Like, I was successful in that I made it to the summit. But to me, walking away from that experience, it still feels like it was a failure because I wasn't in the headspace that I wanted to be in to really be present with that experience.
But there were adventure highs in 2024 as well. Adventures that showed Rachel how much her relationship with her body and being had evolved.
I mean, when I was in Bolivia, I was just on fire and I was having so much fun. I wanted to be somewhere that was high, but also accessible. And La Paz is definitely high. And, I was able to work during the week and then on the weekends go on these amazing, beautiful adventures that was just a couple hour car ride. So it's a little bit different from being, out in the Atacama Desert in Chile or being in the Khumbu Valley in Nepal, where you don't really have that balance. So I was able to be there for 6 weeks and just so I could really acclimate the way that I wanted to and do the things that I wanted to and pick mountains that excited me. And that seemed like fun.
Did you have any specific FKTs that you were looking for down there? How did that all go?
I didn't. And it was awesome for that reason. Like the Huayna Potosi FKT, I had climbed it I think twice already. And I was on the mountain to do like a crevasse rescue course with a friend. And I couldn't sleep. The refugio that I was staying in was like really crowded. There was somebody that was snoring really loud. And I was like, screw this. I just it's 1 a.m. I'm not going to get any sleep. I feel terrible. So I'm just going to go climb the mountain and see how fast I can do it.
And it was really fast.
Yeah. And it was fun.
That's awesome.
I knew that I had to be back at a certain time in order to get breakfast. So I tried to time everything so that way I could be back in time for breakfast. When I went there, I didn't know anybody. I didn't really speak Spanish. I was there by myself. I didn't even really have a plan. I just kind of knew where-ish I was staying, and I found this guiding company that would maybe work and maybe wouldn't, and I wasn't sure. And if you had told me when I was 22 that in my mid-30s I was going to be by myself in Bolivia, not really speaking the language, climbing mountains, I absolutely would have said that you were talking about a different person. That there's no way that I could go and do those things. Or like just the thought of, oh, I could never do that. You know, I have people all the time when I'm doing conversations like this and we talk about the things that I do and they're like, oh, well, I could never do something like that. And I always ask why. And, you know, we have this litany of excuses that we'll create for ourselves in order to try to keep ourselves safe because it's doing something that's different and something that's scary.
Is there anything right now that you've been thinking of, but you're feeling those doubts come in of like, who am I, Rachel, to be doing that?
Gosh. Well, I'm getting married in August, and that is its own kind of exciting and terrifying. You know, it's not ever really something that I envisioned was a part of my life journey. You know, I'd kind of come to this place of like, okay, this is me and I have these things that I do. And like I was okay just kind of being on my own and being in that space. And, you know, now I'm like, who, me? I'm getting married. I'm going and I'm doing this scary thing and I'm committing to sharing my life with another human being and, you know, like opening up my space and joining his space in order to like build this new thing together. It's terrifying and it's so exciting.
You'll definitely find some discomfort too, but hopefully not pain.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's so fun.
Thank you. I am incredibly excited.
Rachel has collected a handful of letters to her name. She's a doctor of physical therapy, plus a bunch of other certifications. I wanted to know how outdoor adventure and physical therapy and her professional work enhance each other in her life.
You know, for me, at the end of the day, it's about being able to sustain doing what I love, which is being up high, being in the mountains, running in crampons, and just being able to play and enjoy. And a big part of that is injury prevention. So making sure that I am staying on top of things in a way that's protecting my joints so that I can continue to do these things that I love 30 years from now. Or 40 years from now. You know, I still want to be able to get up into the mountains and have fun. And I'm sure that steep hills are going to feel a lot steeper than they do now. But to be able to preserve those joint spaces so that I can continue to do the things that I love is important. So I have these like routines that I do every other day for, you know, my hips, shoulders, ankles, knees, to just make sure everybody's happy and healthy. And my back, that's a big one.
Side question here. Do you see many female athletes making mistakes around that type of body work and mobility other than just, you know, skipping it?
Yeah, not just female athletes, but all athletes. I think, you know, when you have a coach, like let's say you work with a running coach, your running coach is mostly going to focus on running, right? Because that's what you're paying them to do. That's their job. So, you know, they're not necessarily thinking about like this tweak that you have in your ankle at mile 5 that goes away at mile 10, but then you're sore 2 days later, right? You know, there isn't that same kind of holistic view. So it's something that I see all athletes kind of erring on if they don't have the right team, because it does take a team to be an athlete, of having that support to be like, hey, you know, like, let's tune in and let's try to find the things that need to be strengthened, because every body is a little bit different. And there are certainly like, you know, blanket exercises that you can do to protect yourself. But I think it's important to have somebody that's a part of your team that you can kind of dial down into the details with. Like when I have a new patient, the way that they talk to me about their body before we even really dial into the specific testing will usually tell me what's going on. So intuitively, we already know that there's something off, even if you can't put your finger on it and be like, oh yeah, well, my piriformis is really tight and it's affecting the way that my hip moves on the other side. So that intuitive knowledge is super important.
Yeah. Are there any guidelines that you have for knowing that a lot of the people in the Cairn Project community are doing mountain sports and outside a lot? Are there any guidelines for telling the difference between discomfort and pain in those sports?
Well, I think listening to those key phrases that we talked about, like sharp, shooting, stabbing, grabbing, throbbing, and learning the difference between soreness, like normal muscle soreness, and dysfunctional pain. So the mantra that I give my patients a lot is sore is safe, don't push through pain. So it's like, oh, okay, this is hard, but I can do this. Like, yeah, my quads are really burning and that's okay. I recognize that that's temporary. Like, I'll probably feel this tomorrow, but I'm not going to, be so uncomfortable that I can't sit on the toilet to pee, right? As opposed to having something where something feels hot or like it's really, my muscles are starting to lock down around it and it's starting to affect the way that I move. There we go. So when someone starts to change the way that they move in order to compensate for the discomfort, I think that's when you're moving into the pain zone.
There's no single path to feeling great in your body, but there are practices that help. Rachel reminds us that tuning into our bodies isn't a luxury, but a necessary skill, and one that we can practice and strengthen and return to. I asked Rachel what tips she would give a woman who wants to feel better in their body.
Your body already knows what it needs, and it's a matter of paying attention and listening. I think that is super important. When you're hungry, you're hungry for a reason, whether it's because you're out training or because you've had a bad day, learning to pay attention to the cues that your body gives you and honoring those cues in a way that is, I don't like to use the word healthy, in a way that is in line with where you want to be. Training doesn't have to be punishment. The fact that we can move our bodies and the fact that I can use my body as a vessel to execute my will of I'm here and I want to be over there on that mountain. And I have this gift of this body to be able to move me from point A to point B, I think is really special. And I think a lot of the times we don't give that the honor that it deserves. We are so much stronger and so much more capable than we ever give ourselves credit for. And if you give yourself just a little bit of credit and just a little bit more grace, and you tell yourself, I can do these things, or what if I could do those things, you will push so much farther than you ever could just following a training program.
Your body knows what it needs, but you need to listen to it. And it might be easier said than done, but I hope that you'll join me and many of the Trailblazers on our lifelong journey of deeply listening to our bodies. If you want to join that conversation, please join us at our live virtual Trail Talk with Rachel on July 31st. We'll dig into injury prevention during outdoor adventures and how you can keep your body happy and healthy for wherever life takes you. Your body is stronger than you think. Listen to it. If you want to support the mission of the Alliance for Gender Equity in Outdoor Adventure, I'll give you several options. 1, you can apply to become a Trailblazer through our program, the Cairn Project. Trailblazers design an adventure fundraiser that crowdfunds scholarships for the Summit Scholarship Foundation. Go to www.cairnproject.org to learn more. 2, you can spread the word about the Summit Scholarship Foundation to help us advance gender equity on and off the mountain. Check it out at www.summitscholarship.org. And 3, you can share the See Her Outside podcast with a friend. Every single share, 5-star review, or comment helps us share stories to get more girls and women outside. See Her Outside is hosted by me, Angie Marie, and edited by Allison Castonguay, with research by Danielle Peacher. Until next time, go get outside.